The Renaissance begins. Christopher's boots echoed softly on the wooden floor as he made his way through his liege's keep. His armor chafed against his shoulders, a constant reminder of the day's responsibilities. Nodding in greeting to some of Lady Hogg's maids as they passed, he finally slipped into the closed door of the nearly abandoned library. In the dimly lit chamber, the scent of aged parchment filled the air, welcoming him like an old friend. Christopher's gaze swept across the rows of dusty shelves, and he couldn't help but feel a pang of both fascination and disappointment. To think that so many nobles allowed their treasure troves of knowledge to waste away, their books neglected and forgotten while they selfishly clung to power and possessions. Yet, in this decaying sanctuary, Christopher found solace. The neglected library seemed to hold the secrets of a bygone era, waiting patiently to be rediscovered by someone who valued their wisdom. As he gently ran his fingers over the spines of the forgotten tomes, he felt a connection to the past, to the authors who had penned these words centuries ago, hoping that their knowledge would stand the test of time. Sir Roger Hogg, a seasoned warrior, cared little for the administrative affairs and entrusted such matters to the maester. To him, the grandness of battlefields overshadowed the subtle power of knowledge. But Christopher was different. He yearned for more than just the clash of swords. In the quiet depths of the library, he sought the missing pieces of his own identity, a purpose beyond serving as a knight. Christopher knew that many men believed their sword to be their only weapon. However, his grandfather had taught him otherwise, emphasizing that a true warrior's repertoire should encompass more than just physical strength. Wit and resourcefulness, he explained, were invaluable tools that could navigate one through challenges far more effortlessly than a sword ever could. His grandfather had shared a poignant lesson, linking their house's downfall to the one-sidedness of their alleged forefather, Christopher IV, renowned as the Hammer of Justice. According to legends, the first man-king had engaged in 100 battles, emerging victorious in 99, with the final one being his only defeat. Christopher couldn't help but be deeply affected by this tale. It reminded him that one defeat was all it took to lose everything. Christopher's father, however, had brushed aside these grand tellings of their storied heritage, dismissing them as the whimsical ramblings of his own father, Christopher's grandfather. Sadly, his father was no longer with them, leaving Christopher to seek solace in his grandfather's narratives, which only intensified his fascination with their family's history. Lost in his thoughts, Christopher remained oblivious to the slender figure that had stealthily made its way into the library. "Shouldn't you be on guard duty?" Christopher's exasperated sigh slipped quietly from his lips as Lady Lyra's mischievous voice echoed through the dimly lit library, her words teasingly dancing between the dilapidated bookshelves. "What do we even pay you for?" she playfully taunted, a hint of playful annoyance in her tone. Christopher couldn't help but shake his head, but a small smirk found its way to his lips as he turned to face his critic. "Lady Lyra," Christopher greeted her with a dramatic bow of his upper body, his tone laced with playful sarcasm. "For protection, I believe," he said, a genuine smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, even though he didn't feel particularly energized to deal with the daughter of his liege. The lady glanced around the dusty room, her warm brown eyes returning to meet his gaze. "I see you have taken the most prominent post. Did you draw the long straw?" she teased, a playful glint in her eyes. Lady Lyra Hogg, the spirited daughter of Sir Roger Hogg and his second and current wife, Lady Jane Gaunt, proudly claimed the distinction of being the niece of the late Kingsguard, Sir Gawain Gaunt. If Sir Roger ever had plans of cozying up to the Kingsguard or even the king, as allegedly unstable as he was deemed, those hopes had sailed with the knight's demise. Then again, Christopher didn't consider Sir Roger to be the most politically inclined noble either, so perhaps it was all merely a coincidence. "All right, jokes aside, what are you actually doing around here?" Lyra folded her arms, studying him with a serious gaze. Her curiosity about his presence in her father's library was evident, and Christopher knew he had to be cautious not to raise any more suspicion with the inquisitive girl. "Adam asked me to slip in and get him a book, all right?" Christopher made an uncomfortable face seamlessly. If anything else, he could believe his mask was inherited from a noble line, certainly. Lyra rolled her eyes. So he asked his friend to get a book for him? He isn't prohibited from entering the castle, as you both should well know. Now it was time to complete this little lie of his. Christopher makes a tired shrug of his shoulders. Bastards don't usually enjoy bumping into their stepmothers, quite the opposite, actually, he said, flashing a charming smile. And your mother would much rather be graced with the handsome visage of her husband's daring defender. Enough, Christopher, Lyra interrupted. I see your point. A genuine, amused smile slipped upon Christopher's face. Oh, really? I guess even innocent noble ladies such as yourself can be affected by my roguish charm, he quipped. Lady Lyra wrinkled her nose in response, but he detected a glimmer of something in her sparkling eyes. However, he knew it would not be politically prudent to be entangled with his liege's daughter, and now was not the time for such interactions. Just don't get caught by father or your captain, she said, her tone pointed. I appreciate your discretion, Princess, Christopher saluted playfully before turning around and strolling down the aisle, pretending to search for a specific tome. He caught a soft scoff from her before her footsteps faded away behind another shelf. He continued without pausing until he heard the reassuring sound of the heavy library door closing. He takes a quick breath of relief before focusing. Now was the time for business. Looking for the dustiest book, he puts two in a knapsack. This should do. Now for pleasure. Dusting off the fading titles, he finally lands upon the title, Noble Houses Around the Eye. Knowing your enemies and allies alike would be smart. His grandfather would tell him regardless. After dropping it into his knapsack, he slips the dusty book under his tabard and quickly leaves the room, not wanting to keep Adam waiting. He was thankful that his shift was finished because as he moved through the halls toward the gates of the keep, he saw his colleagues rush past, mentioning that a royal caravan had been ambushed within Sir Roger's lands. The king had executed lords for less, and Sir Roger was only a landed knight. Christopher hoped his liege wouldn't face execution, though he couldn't help but feel indifferent about the idea. The fate of Sir Roger didn't trouble him at all. He mused, acknowledging the truth behind his liege's lackluster qualities. Sir Roger wasn't the most inspiring knight. However, he conceded that at least Sir Roger wasn't a cruel liege, just distant, a small consolation, considering things could be worse. Reflecting on Sir Roger's limited influence, even in Sow's Horn, Christopher realized his liege's power hardly carried much weight. Rather the devil you know than the one you don't, and all that. As he made it outside the keep, he stopped for a moment to bask in the feeble sunlight. The last 3 years of summer were now apparently over, and it had been a couple of moons already since winter had descended upon the land. The snow had been falling relentlessly, not sparing even the crownlands. Christopher couldn't even imagine how harsh it must be beyond the Trident, where the winters were known to be even more severe. Oi dirt, get over here. This was of course interrupted. Why couldn't he have nice things? Turning to face the voice, he saw a face he really didn't want to encounter on this particular day. As he walked down to meet the other man, he once again gave him a once-over. Galen was short but muscular, not unusual for the well-fed smallfolk in the Crownlands, yet, it was Galen's face that set him apart. To be completely honest, it looked as though a horse had trampled all over it, maybe even a whole herd. The less said about it, the better. Christopher couldn't help but think that his grandfather's lesson about maintaining eye contact didn't account for encountering someone like Galen. What can I help you with today, Master Blacksmith? Christopher tried, his frustration evident. Perhaps, just this once, he could manage a respectful conversation with this stubborn man. Cut the bullshit, dirt. Keep that to those barmaids of yours, Galen retorted sharply, his temper flaring. You are aware in your 7 blessed heads that you can't reserve things forever. You wouldn't even know how many others have been inquiring about that damned breastplate. Do you have the money? His face grew redder and redder with each word until he practically shouted the last part. As you well know, Master Blacksmith, I will have some money within the week, and I will buy that breastplate the second I receive the payment, Christopher replied, his smile placating but lacking sincerity in his eyes. He couldn't wait to be done with this town and its frustrating dealings. Galen huffed, I don't care if you take the money from the king himself, just give me my money. The eyesore finally turned away and began walking off in a huff. Christopher couldn't help but roll his eyes at Galen's melodrama. Once Galen was out of earshot, Christopher couldn't resist whistling a jaunty tune from the bard who had performed at the previous night as he trekked his way home. Christopher carefully navigated the narrow, snow-laden dirt paths that crisscrossed the middling village. As he ventured further, the houses became sparser, and eventually, he arrived at one of the last dwellings situated on the edge of the settlement. Before him stood a sturdy wooden building, its exterior coated with a pristine layer of snow, blending in with the winter landscape. Not too far away, he spotted his uncle's windmill, a familiar sight that loomed over the snow-white countryside, a testament to his family's long-standing presence in the area. Opening the door to his sturdy home, Christopher nodded in greeting to his aunt, a timid woman who, though non-confrontational, wasn't particularly warm toward her husband's extended family. "Would you happen to know where?" he started to ask, but was interrupted before he could finish his sentence. "Cousin. How was the castle today, then?" Spinning around, Christopher was faced with his cousin Robin. A genuine smile lit up his features as he replied, "Well, you know how it is, save a princess here, kill a dragon there, recover ancient tomes in the meanwhile." Christopher didn't bother to continue, as the two cousins were well acquainted with each other's playful banter. His cousin Robin was a year younger, but even then, he stood taller by half a head, a fact Christopher playfully attributed to Robin's mop of dirty blonde hair, almost hiding his mischievous hazel eyes. One thing Christopher always could come back to was that Robin was thinner than a stick in comparison to Christopher's muscular stature. Those many hours in the training yard had undoubtedly paid off, sculpting his physique into one of strength and agility. "You know, Robin, it doesn't help to be tall if someone can snap you in two," Christopher remarked with a playful smirk. Robin responded with a dirty look before swiftly changing the subject. "Father said he wanted to talk to you as soon as possible," Robin said wearily. Christopher sent his cousin a sad smile, understanding the weight of their responsibilities. "You are his only son, even he," Christopher began, but Robin interrupted him. "Cousin," Robin said, giving him a pointed look and tipping his head backward, "Adam is still in his room doing seven knows what. And Tristan is holed up in the chicken coop." Christopher raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the unusual sight of his grandfather venturing outside. It wasn't common these days, considering the gods hadn't been kind to his grandfather's body, making it harder for him each passing year. "I'll go see what your father wants," Christopher nodded, "and then we can take a trip out to the Thirsty Hog and see what's happening." Robin's eyes brightened as Tristan walked past into the bedrooms. The benefit of a guard's wage was that you could ensure your family had their own rooms, a luxury not commonly seen outside of nobility. Yet, Tristan couldn't help but be reminded that he had noble blood within him, even royal blood. House Mud, according to legends, had been the kings of the rivers and the hills in ancient times. Christopher and his grandfather shared the same dream, to rebuild the ancient house once again. It was all part of a greater plan to restore their noble lineage, if not to its former glory, at least to rise out of obscurity. Christopher poked his head into Adam's room. It wasn't anything extravagant, like most of the rooms in their modest dwelling. The space consisted of a simple bed, a wardrobe, and a small table with a chair in front of it. There, he found his friend hunched over something, small wooden bits flying out from the side as he worked on whatever project had captured his attention. "So it is here you are hiding." Adam jumped up a little, laying something down on the table in front of him before turning to face Christopher. "Christopher," Adam said in greeting, his voice tinged with weariness. "I got two more, we can sell them." Christopher stopped as Adam revealed a small pouch that clinked. His eyes widened, and Adam's smile grew wider. "We have enough. I thought." Christopher paused, his voice tinged with curiosity. "I managed to haggle up the price on the previous two. They insisted on meeting at the hour of the owl, not realizing that it is even more suspicious to meet in the middle of the night. But with the increased price, I didn't want to push my luck," Adam explained. "It seems your time in my father's service is at an end." Christopher took a moment to process the information. "I will buy the last armor piece," and then all that remains is to find a tourney, right? It seems so, Sir Mud. Where does this take us? Do we leave immediately, or do we make some preparations first? Christopher shakes his head. No, unfortunately, I am not willing to just wander about aimlessly while waiting for a tourney to spring up. We will wait here until we hear one starting. Robin and I are heading down to the inn now to listen in on what's going on. And before we leave, I'd like to wrap up my remaining business here. What are you two talking about? Robin's curious voice interrupts them, and Christopher swiftly turns to face his cousin. He quickly glances around the corridor, then pulls Robin inside the room, closing the door behind them. He realizes he had been standing awkwardly in the doorway, but the excitement of the news had momentarily clouded his judgment. So, what were you two talking about? Robin inquires, his eyes darting between Christopher and Adam. The two friends share a brief glance, and Adam shrugs his shoulders, leaving Christopher to respond. We are planning to leave, Christopher explains after a moment. We have been planning for quite a long time, actually. The news surprises Robin, and he leans in closer, intrigued. Leave? Where are you going? Christopher smiles, keeping his voice low. There's a whole world out there beyond these lands, and we want to see what lies beyond the horizon. As you know, I am descended from the old Muds. His cousin's eyes widen with excitement. Oh, I thought that was only something the others teased you with. Christopher's smile grows, and he nods affirmatively. No, it's true. The tales of House Mud's glorious past were passed down through generations. While others may tease, it's a legacy I carry in my blood, and I aim to reclaim that legacy. Robin's eyes gleamed with admiration. That's incredible. So, you're like a hidden prince, ready to reclaim his kingdom. Christopher chuckles softly. Perhaps not a kingdom, but I do believe there's more to our family's history than just obscurity. And I don't want to spend my life wondering what if. I want to venture out, explore the realms, and make a name for House Mud once again. His cousin's enthusiasm is infectious, and Christopher can see the spark of adventure igniting in Robin's eyes. Can I come with you? Imagine the adventures we'll have. Christopher's expression turns more serious. Robin, I'd love to have you by my side, but you know your father. He may not take kindly to the idea of you leaving. You are his only son, and he doesn't have any other apprentices. Robin's face falls, disappointment evident in his features. You're right, father will be furious. Christopher places a reassuring hand on his cousin's shoulder. Let me handle it. Once the time is right, I'll talk to him. And if he sees how important this is to me, maybe he'll understand. Robin nods, determination returning to his gaze. Okay, I trust you, cousin. Just promise me you won't forget about me when you become a famous knight or something. Christopher grins, his playful side resurfacing. Forget you? Never. You'll always be my loyal squire, ready to join me in every daring escapade. With that, Robin's spirits lift once again, and the two friends share a moment of excitement for the journey ahead. Christopher knows that convincing his uncle won't be easy, but he's ready to face any challenge to make his dreams a reality. The thrill of adventure and the hope of restoring House Mud's legacy fuels his determination, and he knows that with Robin and Adam at his side, there's nothing they can't overcome. The House of Mud, Tristan Mud, an elderly man, was considered small folk by those around him, but he refused to see himself that way. Despite his house having faded into obscurity centuries ago, he held on to his pride and refused to accept his diminished status. For him, the legacy carried in his blood passed down through generations of forefathers and descendants, defined his true identity. Tristan Mud inherited the knowledge of his family's legacy from his uncle, who had received it from his father before him. Through generations, this valuable information had struggled to survive, encountering occasional disinterest from certain family members. Unfortunately, Tristan's uncle had disappeared to Essos after the Fourth Black Fire Rebellion, and they never crossed paths again. While Tristan knew that the full restoration of his house might not occur within his lifetime, he was determined to do his part in preserving its heritage. He found solace in the knowledge that he had contributed to the efforts of restoring its former glory, and that alone brought him contentment. Throughout his life, the faith and the validity of his family legacy never wavered in Tristan's mind or heart. However, he was aware that not every member of his family upheld the ideals of their ancestry, particularly his father and son. His father had been a restless man, dismissing what he referred to as grumpkins and snarks. Having grown up during King Makar's reign, Tristan's father actively participated in the Peak Uprising and later defended Aegon V during the Fourth Blackfire Rebellion. Tristan's son, however, had chosen a different path. He became a humble trader and eventually settled down with a lovely miller's daughter, finding contentment away from the adventurous life of traveling the King's Road. Unlike Tristan, he showed little interest in the family legacy, and the restoration of their house didn't capture his attention. The only significant contribution he made was in fathering Christopher. Christopher, on the other hand, became the source of immense pride and joy for Tristan. He saw great potential in his grandson and held an unwavering confidence that Christopher would not only restore the family's nobility but also achieve much more. Christopher stood as the culmination of centuries of laborious work and the improbable survival of their family's heritage. In an achievement often overlooked by many, he had accomplished something invaluable. He had rid himself of the small folk's greatest hindrance to nobility, illiteracy. Tristan, though he could barely write and, with effort, read certain words, had managed to grasp a level of literacy that was indeed impressive for someone outside the nobility. However, this skill had only come to him in his later years, and as his body failed him, he regretfully couldn't impart this invaluable skill to his beloved grandson. After the tragic death of Tristan's son, Mark, and his wife, Maris, who both succumbed to the bloody flux, Tristan had no choice but to take his grandson and everything they could carry to his good daughter's brother. Fortunately, the brother graciously opened his home to Tristan and the 6-year-old Christopher, offering them a place of refuge and support in their time of need. As if the gods had, for once, smiled down upon House Mud, it turned out that old Sir Roger's hog-baseborn son had become a ward of Mari's brother. Despite his illegitimate status, this young man had received a martial education and was well versed in sums and letters. Adam Waters, as he was known, held no aversion to sharing his knowledge with Christopher. On the contrary, he was delighted to have someone with whom he could discuss books and the learned arts. In a twist of fate, Christopher found a kindred spirit in Adam Waters. The young boy's thirst for knowledge matched Adam's enthusiasm to impart it. Under Adam's tutelage, Christopher's literacy and understanding of various subjects blossomed. They spent countless hours immersed in discussions and debates, discovering the world through the pages of books and exploring the depths of history and philosophy. Adam's presence proved to be a boon for the Mud legacy, and Tristan felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for this fortuitous turn of events. He knew that Christopher was receiving an education that he himself could not provide, and it filled him with pride and hope for the future of his house. While they might not have been aspiring to become maesters, both Christopher and Adam shared a deep appreciation for the knowledge hidden within the flimsy pages of books, a passion that Tristan had instilled in them. Tristan, despite his own limited literacy, understood the power and value of knowledge. He watched with admiration as his grandson, Christopher, absorbed every bit of wisdom shared by Adam. As the two boys delved into the world of books and learning, Tristan couldn't help but feel immense pride in the intellectual curiosity they displayed. In their shared pursuit of understanding, Christopher and Adam forged a strong bond. They reveled in discussing the intricacies of history, philosophy, and various subjects that captured their imaginations. It was through these animated conversations that the legacy of House Mud continued to thrive in an unbroken chain of passing knowledge from one generation to the next, nurturing a bright future for their house. Tristan let out a contented sigh, settling into the plush chair placed strategically before the crackling fireplace. He relished the comforting warmth that enveloped his weathered bones, soothing the weariness of his advancing years. The flickering dance of the flames cast playful shadows on the walls, creating a cozy atmosphere that welcomed a moment of reprieve from the outside world. A magnificent stag's pelt adorned the back of the chair, a thoughtful gift from the local blacksmith to Tristan's generous host. The fur was soft to the touch, a testament to the creature's regal strength and beauty. As Tristan ran his fingers over the texture, memories of his youth and ventures in the wilderness came flooding back. The door creaked open, abruptly interrupting Tristan from his musings. He turned his gaze towards the entrance, where a sight both heartwarming and bittersweet greeted him. His grandson, Christopher, now clad in the colors of House Hog, stood before him, wearing a yellow tabard emblazoned with the red head of a hog on his chest. Though it was a sign of their current circumstances, it made Tristan long for the day when that tabard would be replaced with a finely crafted brown doublet, proudly displaying the emerald-studded mud crown, the symbol of their true lineage. Christopher's youthful face, framed by short-cut brown hair, lit up upon seeing his grandfather. There was a mix of excitement and apprehension in his striking green-blue eyes as they locked gazes. Tristan, with the wisdom of age, patiently awaited his grandson's acknowledgement. Christopher, in turn, nodded respectfully in greeting. It was a habit Tristan had instilled in his young heir, a reminder that if Christopher was destined to be the one to restore their family legacy, he should carry himself with the grace and dignity befitting of his noble lineage. Christopher's face was aglow with excitement, and his words resonated through the air, electrifying the atmosphere. "Grandfather," he spoke with a hint of enthusiasm, "I believe we've found it." Tristan remained silent, his keen eyes observing his grandson as he deepened into contemplation. Christopher had grown into a fine young man, now at the age of 5 and 10. The years of hard work as a miller's helper and later as one of Sir Roger's guards had bestowed upon him a muscular, yet lean, build that spoke of his diligence and dedication to his duties. High cheekbones and a sharp chin showcased his noble heritage, a reminder of the mud blood flowing strongly through their veins. Tristan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, knowing that their shared noble lineage was not only preserved but carried with honor by this young heir. Christopher's short-cut brown hair was a hallmark of their family, a trait that seemed to pass down through the generations. Tristan fondly remembered his own youthful days with a full mane of brown hair, now whitened and shrunk with age, as well as how his father and uncle had possessed the same distinctive feature. It was a unique mark of the Mud lineage, a thread connecting them to their ancestors. The young man's most striking feature, however, was his mesmerizing eye combination, a captivating blend of green and blue inherited from his mother's side. It added an air of charm to his already handsome appearance, undoubtedly making him a sought-after match in the eyes of potential suitors, even without considering his storied noble background. Tristan eventually leans forward. "Found what, boy?" Christopher slides a small chair out in front of Tristan and sits down. "Well, as you know," Christopher began thoughtfully, "I think it will be prudent for us not to solely rely upon our legacy and heritage. After all, it is not something easily proven or disproven with lines as old as ours." His words held the wisdom that Tristan had come to expect from his grandson. Christopher was right. While their family's noble lineage and historical significance were essential aspects of their identity, relying solely on these attributes would not be enough to reclaim their place in the world. Tristan's mind wandered to tales of some of his forefathers who had attempted to wield their heritage as their only tool, often with costly consequences. One such example was Tristan's own son's namesake, Mark Mudd. Mark had proclaimed himself king of the rivers and the hills during the time of the Storm King's reign over both the Riverlands and Stormlands, centuries before the conquest. His audacious claim had led to his capture by the Lord Dundarian of the time and a swift execution by the ruthless Durrandon king. While the daring and courage of their ancestors were admirable, both Tristan and his grandson knew they needed to approach their current situation with a more comprehensive strategy, one that embraced both their heritage and their ability to prove their worth to the world. "You are right, grandson," Tristan finally spoke, his voice tinged with wisdom. "Our legacy should be a foundation, but it is through our actions and achievements in the present that we shall truly honor our ancestors. So, what have you discovered?" He couldn't help but consider the examples of powerful houses like the Tyrrells, whose history or lack thereof seemed to have little bearing as long as they had the right connections or power. There will be a tourney at Harrenhal within the next year. I just heard the rumours from a couple of hedge knights at the Hog. Christopher's eyes shone with excitement, brimming with the anticipation of the upcoming event. Tristan's doubts were evident as he questioned, and? The Wents were indeed another example of a house that had relied on the right connections at the right time. In the past, they were mere landed knights and vassals of the preceding lords of Harrenhal, House Lothston. When the last Lothston had passed away, House Went was granted the lordship of Harrenhal, and since then, they had strived to gain influence and prominence. Under their current lord, Humphrey Went, they were probably at their greatest extent, with his sister having been the late Lady Tully and his brother serving in King Aerys's Kingsguard. Christopher's excitement was palpable as he leaned forward, eager to share his findings. "That's the interesting part, grandfather," he said, a hint of excitement colouring his voice. "This tourney is not just any ordinary tourney. The prize money that is allegedly listed is even greater than the prize money for the Lord Hans tourney a few years ago." Tristan's eyes narrowed in bemusement, his mind processing the information. Where would a lord like Lord Went acquire such an exorbitant sum of money? The lords of Harrenhal, while prestigious and often prominent, were not known for their wealth, especially compared to the Lannisters of Casterly Rock, who were renowned for their lavish displays during tourneys. A wave of curiosity washed over Tristan, and he leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. He knew that prize money of such magnitude could attract knights and lords from all corners of the realm, promising fierce competition and a chance for the winners to secure their names in the annals of history. Christopher leaned in theatrically, lowering his voice to a hushed whisper. "It is rumoured that the tourney is sponsored by the Prince of Dragonstone himself," he revealed with a hint of excitement. "That would certainly explain the vast prize purse." Christopher's eyes widened at the implications. If Prince Rhaegar was attending, then surely almost every knight and lord in the realm who hadn't already been enticed by the rewards would be making their way to Harrenhal as well. Tristan couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. What started as a chance to reclaim their legacy had now transformed into a grand stage where House Mud could shine brightly once more. "You must prepare thoroughly," Tristan declared, his voice tinged with determination. "Our arms, our armor, and our demeanor, all must reflect the nobility and honor of House Mud. This will be an opportunity not just for us, but for all those who once believed that our family's glory had faded with time." His eyes locked with his grandson's, their intensity conveying the weight of his words. "And never forget, Christopher, that none of them are your friends. In this grand game of lords and knights, they will laugh and drink with one hand and sink a dagger into your back with the other." As they exchanged a solemn nod of understanding, Tristan could see the regret in his grandson's eyes, and he knew immediately what the young man was thinking of. It was a conversation they had had countless times before. "Are you sure you will not join me, grandfather?" Christopher inquired, his voice tinged with genuine concern. Tristan shook his head, though no sadness was visible in his expression. "No, my dear boy, this is beyond me now," he replied with a touch of resignation. He took a searching look at his grandson, his eyes filled with pride and love. "You will do our house proud, and I am in no state to travel, even to Harrenhal. I can barely make my way to the breakfast table these days," Tristan joked lightly, trying to ease the tension of the moment. "I doubt even the trident could keep you from a hearty breakfast," Christopher quipped, but there was a sad glimpse in his striking eyes. The exchange between grandfather and grandson held a mix of bittersweet emotions. Tristan understood that the weight of their family's restoration now rested squarely on Christopher's shoulders. His physical limitations had confined him, but his spirit remained strong, eager to see his grandson carry forward the Mud legacy. "Regardless, I want to show you something," Christopher suddenly says, all sadness replaced by excitement. Tristan feels his curiosity peaking at the sudden change in tone. "Oh? Well, lead the way," Tristan says while standing up a little shakily. Christopher is soon by his side and Tristan sends a grateful look to his grandson. They soon moved to Christopher's room, and he cautiously opened the door, allowing Tristan to lead the way. Tristan stepped inside, feeling a mix of anticipation and curiosity. As he took a few steps, He couldn't help but gasp in awe. There, standing on a human-sized armor stand, was a set of sturdy armor with a castle-forged sword leaning against one of the legs. The decorated wooden handle of a knife sat on the waist of the armor. But what overwhelmed Tristan with emotion was the sight of the shining breastplate adorned with a brown tabard. Prominently stitched upon the front was the emerald-encrusted and golden crown of House Mud. A tear escaped from Tristan's eye, and he wiped it away with the sleeve of his shirt. He turned to face his grandson, his heart full of love and pride. Christopher's hopeful face mirrored his own emotions. House Mud will rise once again, and I could not have asked for a better executor of this fate, Tristan said, his voice trembling with emotion. Christopher's eyes shone with determination and commitment. I will do whatever it takes, grandfather, he replied earnestly. To see our family's name restored to its rightful place, to uphold the honor of House Mud, it is my greatest ambition. Tristan placed a hand on his grandson's shoulder, conveying his unwavering support. I have no doubt about that, my boy. You have shown me the depth of your dedication, and I know that you will carry our legacy with grace and strength. As they stood together, the weight of their family's history and the promise of its future weighed heavily upon them. But they faced it with courage, united by a bond that transcended time, a bond of love, mentorship, and shared dreams. The sight of the House Mud tabard on the armor stand filled Tristan's heart with hope and a renewed sense of purpose. They were not alone in this endeavor. The legacy of House Mud had endured, and now, with his grandson as the torchbearer, it would shine brightly once more. With a final look at the armor stand, Tristan felt a surge of determination. Prepare yourself, my boy, he said with a steady voice. For the world shall witness the return of House Mud, and they shall know that our name is not lost to history but stands firm, ready to reclaim its place among the great houses of the realm. Robin led the modest mount, a sturdy horse with a simple and reliable build. The animal pulled the empty cart dutifully behind it, its hooves moving with steady determination. It wasn't a magnificent steed by any means, but Robin had chosen it with care, considering their limited resources. As they walked along the path, Robin's cautious optimism remained. The breeder had assured him that the horse was hard-working and dependable, well suited for their needs. While Christopher on his guard's wage couldn't afford a grand and majestic mount, a horse was a big investment even the most hard-working small folk could hope for, and this was only the start. With a healthy sheen to its coat and bright, alert eyes, the horse exuded a promise of a strong bond between them. Robin couldn't help but admire Christopher, considering him his idol. The older boy's boundless ambition and magnetic charisma drew Robin in, and the thought that Christopher would let him experience so much more than just Sow's Horn and the surrounding fields seemed almost unbelievable. As far as Robin knew, his family had seldom ventured beyond the familiar confines of their home. The only exception was his late Aunt Mari's, who had once journeyed outside the area and coincidentally met Christopher's father. It seemed that a spirit of adventure ran in Christopher's family, with even his grandfather being relatively well-traveled compared to Robin's own kin. The thought of this exciting lineage filled Robin with anticipation, and he couldn't wait to see where Christopher would lead him. As far as Robin knew, family names were typically reserved for the lords and nobility in the region. However, since the arrival of the Mudds, who had adopted a family name, it had become something of a running joke within the village. Some villagers mocked the unfamiliar family, seeing their attempt to align with the noble class as comical and unattainable. Despite the jests from a few, Robin couldn't help but admire the Mudds' ambition to elevate themselves in society. Their boldness to pursue a status beyond their origins intrigued him. It was a stark contrast to the conservative traditions prevalent in Sow's Horn, where change was often met with skepticism. As he thought about Christopher and his family, Robin wondered if their pursuit of nobility was a manifestation of their adventurous spirit. Perhaps it was their way of challenging the status quo and daring to dream of a different life. While others may find humor in their aspirations, Robin found himself drawn to the audacity and determination behind their actions. As Robin strolled through the village, he couldn't ignore the curious glances directed his way. It wasn't unexpected, He knew he'd be just as intrigued if he saw someone else parading around with a brand new horse and cart. After all, things like this didn't happen often in Sow's Horn. The memory of his aunt's departure resurfaced in his mind. Her leaving had caused quite the commotion in town, with gossip lingering for weeks. And her return, pregnant and accompanied by a husband and good father, had fueled the gossip mill even more. Undeterred by the chatter, Robin remained resolute in following his own path. The allure of adventure and discovery called to him, much like it had to his aunt before. He couldn't help but feel that some of the curious glances held a tinge of envy for his daring change in course. After all, what were these folks doing with their lives anyway? Where was their sense of adventure and curiosity? With each step, he embraced the excitement of the unknown, ready to forge his own unique journey. He knew that life in Sow's Horn could be predictable, but he craved something more. The prospect of exploring new horizons and experiencing the world beyond his village thrilled him. As Robin finally arrived home, his mother greeted him at the front door with a shocked expression. He heard her call out to someone, and soon his father appeared, first surprised and then furious. Robin could see his father's face turn red even from a distance. Despite the tension, he continued on, as steadfast as the horse beside him, until he stood within talking distance. His father's anger had only grown in the meantime, and the furious roar echoed around him. "What have you done, boy?" his father thundered. "Have I not taught you, you ungrateful sack of shit, not to steal?" Robin's mother seemed conflicted, but she turned to his father and tried to intervene. "Husband, please." His father raised his arm, causing his mother to stumble backward. The sight was distressing, but Robin stayed composed. He knew his father struggled to restrain himself. "Uncle, please," Robin sighed in relief as his cousin Christopher's smooth voice intervened. His father had always favored Christopher much more than Robin, and that painful reality weighed heavily on him. It seemed he was constantly falling short in comparison to his cousin, or even his father's ward Adam. His father's gaze remained fixed on Robin as Christopher and Adam appeared from around the house, carrying a couple of boxes. "Son, don't involve yourself in this, this is between me and Robin," his father said. To hear his father address Christopher so respectfully and call him son as well felt like the final blow. "I'm afraid I'm already involved in this business," Christopher replied, stepping forward. "Uncle, wait, this is simply a misunderstanding." His father turned his attention to his nephew, willing to hear him out, something he seldom did for Robin, his own flesh and blood. "I have purchased a new horse and cart from Master Ambrose," Christopher explained, nodding towards Robin, "and I asked Robin to complete the purchase and retrieve it for me. I assure you that if you ask both the quartermaster, who agreed to provide me with an early wage for the month, and Master Ambrose, they will confirm that everything was done within the bounds of the law." Robin's father scrutinizes both him and Christopher, searching for any signs of deception. Eventually, he turns his full attention back to Christopher, completely disregarding Robin. Throughout, Robin remains stoic, despite noticing his mother still at his father's side, sending him worried looks. "What are you planning to do with it then?" his father asks wearily, clearly tired of the whole situation. Christopher responds without hesitation, displaying an impressive amount of decisiveness. "I am leaving," he declares. A moment of silence ensues before he looks at both Adam and Robin, including them in his statement. "Or rather, we are leaving." As Christopher's declaration hung in the air, the weight of his words was palpable. The only sound that broke the stillness was the gasp of shock from Robin's mother. Her face revealed the toll the situation was taking on her, and it was evident that she felt completely overwhelmed and out of her depth. Robin's heart ached for his mother, seeing the distress she was experiencing. He knew that this family confrontation was pushing her to her limits. Her conflicted emotions were apparent, torn between her loyalty to her husband and her concern for her son. Robin turned his attention to his father, bracing himself for the explosion of anger he expected. However, to his absolute shock, his father simply slumped in defeat. "I had hoped." "Well, it doesn't really matter." Do whatever it is that calls you, Muds. I presume old Tristan is staying? Even Christopher seemed taken aback by the uncharacteristic reaction from the man and nodded in response. Then I will let him live here for however much time he has left, the miller said simply before turning toward the door. Robin felt numb, a whirlwind of emotions crashing within him. However, as the reality sank in, a surge of rage began building up. How dare you, he cried out. His father turned to face him with emotionless eyes. Why, you bastard? The man looked at him for a moment before turning again and disappearing from sight. Robin stood there, breathing heavily, unsure of everything he had ever thought he knew. His father's coldness towards him hurt deeply, but he couldn't fathom that his father was entirely devoid of any love for his only child. As his mother cautiously approached him, Robin's rage momentarily subsided. He felt conflicted, not knowing how to process his father's unexpected reaction. His mother's presence felt both comforting and unsettling. That man is not my father, he declared coldly, his emotions in turmoil. His mother looked torn, her eyes darting everywhere before she slowly continued to approach him. Robin stood still as she stopped in front of him. With trembling arms, she enveloped him in a hug. He hesitated before hesitantly enclosing her slim frame with his own. His breathing slowed as he closed his eyes, seeking some semblance of solace. I will never forget you, wherever it is the gods lead you, his mother said haltingly, holding him tightly. I only hope and pray that you find whatever it is you are missing. Giving him one last squeeze, she slowly stepped back, looking both hesitant and resolute. With a small smile, she nodded before following her husband into the house, casting a last look at him. Christopher and Adam approached with solemn faces, understanding the weight of the moment. Christopher placed a comforting hand on Robin's shoulder, no words were needed. At that moment, the rage and numbness within Robin dissipated, replaced with a newfound sense of connection and belonging. He looked at his two new companions, and a sense of certainty washed over him. Perhaps this had been his true family all along, it sure felt like that now.